Hey friends, the day has finally come when we're all faced to transition into using GA4 or Google Analytics 4, and I have a consensus that not everyone is willing, but today we're going to talk about what GA4 is and our perspective into how to transition into using it a lot easier. So if you don't know, Google Analytics 4 is both a web analytics tool as well as an app analytics tool into one. So one of the main differences between GA3 or Universal Analytics compared to GA4 is that GA3 you weren't really able to see analytics from your app or software. You had to use Firebase and you had to integrate those two, and it was very cumbersome, so a lot of people used different tools to essentially track their app events or user journeys within their apps. I think one of the biggest highlights on GA4 is being able to discover insights or more emphasis on event-based user interactions rather than session-based, and we'll get into those concepts a lot. So GA4 is a web and analytics tool focused on helping you track your user journey, giving you that insight to understand what works, what doesn't, and potentially how you can improve those funnels or those journeys. Going in on what GA4 is, like I mentioned, it helps you collect both website and app data within one platform. It uses event-based data instead of session-based, and we'll get into that a bit more in the next few slides. GA4 has more emphasis in privacy controls, including cookie measurement and behavioral and conversion modeling. It has the ability to gather insights and create predictive analysis for you, so you're able to understand, this particular cohort audience, what revenue can we get or what amount of data can we get within the next 2 months. So you've got almost a data analyst in your team within the platform. And then finally, one of the biggest changes of GA4 is its integrations and its ability to integrate quite easily to different platforms. One of the biggest ones is its ability to export data to BigQuery. So if you've got lots and lots of data, you're a big company, there's lots of data to analyze, you can export that data onto a cloud server like BigQuery and kind of start to segment audiences and kind of push it back to GA4 and then push it back to Google Ads, for example. So what are the things you can actually track in GA4? Here's a few events within your website. So if someone lands on a specific page, they click on this particular call to action, they download a PDF, they become a lead. Or if you're an app-based business, when someone signs up or maybe drops off at some point, being able to understand those events and how a user gets to that specific event that you're looking to track. Flows, which is essentially your user journey, or GA4 also calls it path analysis, and understanding the user journey, but at the same time drop-offs within that. A great example of that is, as mentioned earlier, a user lands on the homepage, they go to an about section, they read your blogs, they sign up, and at some point they become a user, and then at that point, you can start to create different flows or path analysis beyond someone signing up. So another important GA4 tracking or measurement tool you can use is actually being able to analyze a user if they're using the same exact Chrome profile within different devices, or otherwise known as cross-device or cross-platform tracking. Whereas in GA3, if someone was checking your website on a phone or a tablet or a desktop, they would be seen as 3 different sessions or 3 different users. Now in GA4, that's unified. So GA4 has a modeling algorithm that helps you understand cohorts of users that are essentially just one, even if they're multiple devices. So rather than having duplicate data that isn't quite validated, now you have just one user for that specific event. So it's a bit more lean in a sense, so there's no more fat. You're not able to dissect farther down. You know that particular user is one user rather than 3, for example. And then the final thing you can track, or I guess you can utilize from GA4 really, is your ability to have predictive analysis. Again, as mentioned earlier, assuming you have a lot of data, you've got data coming in, you can now use that data to create predictions or machine learning models for you to better understand what might happen in the future. So for example, we've spent £10,000 for the month of September. On Black Friday around November, if we spend 3 times as much on advertising, how much revenue do you think we can get? How much return on ad spend we can get? There's a caveat to that, which is obviously these things are machine learning models. They're not perfect, but as we know, that's the whole point of attribution, is that it's never perfect. Data is never perfect. So we have to approach data and insights with a bit of thought. We need to slow down and obviously try to remove our biases. Anyway, so what are the actual differences between GA3 or Universal Analytics compared to GA4? Here's a few that I think are very important to note. GA3 is very focused on user and session-based data, whereas in GA4 it's very event and conversion-based. So I have a feeling that the team at Google really want to focus on interactions that your user has with your website or app rather than traffic or understanding which landing page they've seen for how long. It's more about what are they actually doing, what are the actions they're taking, what are the groups of conversions that they're taking. Another one with GA3, you used to have funnels that were predefined. It was very rigid, and it was, from my understanding, not a lot of people were using it because of its complexity. There was a bit of friction there to use it. Whereas in GA4, it's a lot more flexible. You're able to even retrospectively understand your users from their endpoint all the way to the start point of their user journey. And then, as mentioned earlier, GA3, there was no cross-device or cross-platform analysis. If your user was on a mobile, a tablet, and a desktop, that would be seen as 3 different users. Whereas in GA4, it unifies that, assuming that user is using the same exact Chrome profile or the same exact Google Mail, Gmail, then it would be seen as 1 user. So it's a more accurate data insight. So it would be a more accurate data or insight, if that makes sense. So here are the top 10 differences between GA3 and GA4. I won't go through every single point, so pause the video if need be. And just a word of warning, it's very important that you implement GA4 as soon as possible. Whether or not you're going to use it is a different conversation. Something to keep in mind is that GA3's data, all that historical data you have as a company, won't transfer over to GA4, and Google's made that clear many times through articles and through just my conversations with Google reps or Google Ads reps, for example, that there is no transfer of data there. So I'd recommend implementing it. Do it now, don't procrastinate, and we'll talk about alternative solutions in a moment. I have a feeling that most people don't really want to use GA4. It's almost a different tool. There's a different UI, there's a different user experience. Some of the terminologies are different as well. So what are some alternatives we can actually look at? Here's a few. You've got Adobe Analytics. The caveat to that is it's an enterprise solution. There's a high price point. Implementation's a nightmare. When I was working for an agency, working with BMW, they were using Adobe Analytics as their source of truth. You've got Mixpanel, which is a great analytics tool, although it's more catered to product analytics or apps, but in a sense it can still track web data for you. You've got Heap, and there's a new analytics tool that everyone's talking about, and there's really quite a high rating and buzz around it called Pweek. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right, Pweek Pro. So have a look at these tools, and to be fair, have a look at all the analytics tools out there. Try them out, find the one that really resonates with you. There's no hard and fast rules deciding which one, as long as it works for you, and more importantly, it's answering the questions that you have from your data. That's the tool that you should use. How do you feel about GA4? Do you want to learn how to use it? Are you keen in that transition? Do you have any feedback for Google, or do you recommend any analytics tool that I should use? Leave them in the comments below. I'd love to hear them. Till next time, peace out.